Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome back to another explainer. If you've ever felt like the information you spend hours trying to learn just slips right through your fingers the literal second you need it, well, you're in the exact right place today. We live in this era of absolute information overload, right? We're consuming articles, documentaries, and books at a staggering rate. But honestly, how much of that are we actually retaining? Today, we're looking at a wildly powerful mental model that's going to fundamentally change how you learn, how you retain info, and, honestly, how you view your own expertise. We're going to build a roadmap to actual, undeniable comprehension by unpacking a method known as the Feynman Technique.
So, picture this. Have you ever been sitting at your desk, maybe surrounded by these towering stacks of heavy textbooks, or maybe you're just scrolling through a really dense analytical article? And as you read, you're nodding along. You feel brilliant. You feel like you're absorbing every single word perfectly. You highlight a few sentences, maybe bookmark the page, and you think to yourself, yep, I've got this. But then, maybe over dinner an hour later, a friend asks you what you were reading about. You excitedly open your mouth to explain it, and nothing. Just complete static, a total blank. You stumble, you kind of vaguely gesture with your hands, you throw out a couple of disconnected buzzwords, and suddenly it hits you. You literally cannot articulate a single concrete concept. It is so incredibly frustrating, isn't it? It's this shared, almost universal experience of feeling like an absolute genius in the moment, only to feel totally lost just moments later. Now listen, this isn't a failure of your memory, it's not your intelligence, it's actually a very specific cognitive trap that pretty much all of us fall into on a daily basis.
Now, what's really fascinating here is that cognitive psychologists actually have a name for this exact trap. They call it the illusion of competence. See, when you're reading a really well-written text or looking at a beautifully designed diagram, your brain easily processes the words and the visual flow. And that cognitive ease sends a little signal to your brain going, yes, I know this. But here's the catch. Recognizing information and actually mastering it, those are two completely different things. Actually, let me rephrase that. They aren't just different, they're worlds apart. This illusion makes you falsely believe that just because the material makes sense while it's right in front of you, you possess this deep internal understanding of it. So to break this pervasive trap, we look to Richard Feynman. He wasn't just a Nobel Prize-winning physicist who worked on the Manhattan Project. He was famously known across the entire scientific community as the Great Explainer. Despite operating at the absolute highest levels of quantum electrodynamics, Feynman literally abhorred pretentious academic jargon. During his time teaching at Caltech, he became legendary for refusing to hide behind complex math. Instead, he forced himself to break down the sheer mysteries of the universe into plain English, stuff that any freshman student could easily grasp. His whole philosophy was basically, if you couldn't explain something simply, you simply didn't understand it.
And that brings us to the bedrock of his method. Feynman's core rule is incredibly simple, but man, it is deceptively difficult. True understanding means being able to explain a complex idea to a child. Picture a deeply curious 8-year-old. They don't know your industry buzzwords, right? They don't have a master's degree. If you try to hide behind complicated vocabulary, they're just going to look at you with this blank stare and ask, but why? Stripping away all of that technical jargon to teach a concept to someone with zero foundational knowledge, that is the ultimate undeniable test of genuine expertise. Think about trying to explain something like inflation, or maybe a black hole, to a kid. You absolutely cannot say macroeconomic supply constraints or gravitational singularities. No way. You have to find real, tangible analogies. If you cannot distill your knowledge down to its absolute simplest, most foundational elements, then the harsh truth is you just don't understand it as well as you think you do. You're still caught right there in the illusion of competence.
So how do we actually take this theoretical rule and turn it into a practical, everyday process? Well, it breaks down into 3 pretty simple steps. Step 1, choose. You select the exact concept you want to learn, grab a blank piece of paper, and write that concept right at the top. Let's say you want to truly understand compound interest. Starting with a totally blank page is absolutely crucial because it instantly removes that crutch of just recognizing the material in a book. Okay, step 2, teach. Now, you write out an explanation of compound interest exactly as if you were speaking directly to that 8-year-old. This means you've got to enforce a strict rule of zero jargon. You can't use words like principal or annual percentage yield or amortization. Instead, you lean on clear analogies. You might write something like, it's like rolling a tiny snowball down a super long snowy hill. As it rolls, it picks up more snow, and because it gets bigger, it picks up even more snow with every single roll. And then we hit step 3, identify. As you're writing out this child-friendly explanation, you have to ruthlessly monitor your own thought process. The exact second you stumble, the moment you hesitate trying to explain why that snowball keeps growing, or when you catch yourself desperately wanting to slip in the word yield just because you can't think of a simpler way to phrase it, you stop.
That exact moment where you stopped, those are your gaps. Those little moments of hesitation, those desperate grasps for complicated terminology, those are your friction points. And experiencing this is actually a deeply humbling moment because it's the exact second the illusion of competence just shatters and reality sets in. But here's the beautiful part about the Feynman technique. It isn't just about exposing what you don't know. It's entirely about what you do next. When you identify these specific blind spots, you now have a highly targeted roadmap for your learning. Instead of wastefully rereading an entire textbook from chapter 1 just to feel productive, you go straight back to your source material to study only those specific friction points. You figure out exactly how to explain that missing piece, you refine it, and then you go right back to your blank piece of paper. You simplify your explanation again and again, iterating on this process until absolutely every single piece of jargon disappears and the whole explanation flows flawlessly. When you do this, you're actually wiring the core logic of the concept deep into your brain. You're replacing fragile short-term memorization with robust, permanent comprehension.
So the crucial point really boils down to this. Complexity is often just a mask for a lack of deep understanding. In our academic and professional lives, we're kind of conditioned to believe the exact opposite, aren't we? We try to sound super smart in meetings by throwing around big words, acronyms, and these wildly convoluted explanations. But this explainer reveals that true mastery, true genius really, actually lies in the ability to simplify. And remember, simplifying is never about dumbing things down. It's about clarifying. It requires you to know a subject so thoroughly, from every conceivable angle, that you can translate it into literally any language, even the language of an 8-year-old child. If you want to master a subject, you have to be willing to strip away the mask. You got to simplify to learn. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to really test yourself today. Think about one professional or academic topic you claim to be an absolute expert in. If I brought an 8-year-old into the room right now, could you explain it to them from start to finish without losing their attention? Think about that for a second. Try it out. See you next time.